What's going on, everyone? This is Mekkah, and in this video I'm going to talk about Fire Emblem Echoes. I've been playing it for a while because I was sent the game by Shirix. I showed my unwrapping of the package he sent it in on a video a while ago, and since then people have been asking me in the comment section and in the stream what I thought of Echoes and how far along am I. So I'm going to be doing a pretty elaborate review of the game so far. Basically, I'm going to tell you how I experienced it. Now, there will be no spoilers in this video. I'm not going to spoil anything related to the story. And this is all just my opinion. This is my experience with Echoes. This is how much I enjoyed certain aspects of it and didn't enjoy certain other aspects of it. So it doesn't really carry any weight in the game review world. It's just how I like Echoes, basically. I'm probably going to put some random Echoes footage in the background, like a Mangs Let's Play or something. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. I do have quite a bit to say about Echoes, but it's always kind of hard to estimate. I wrote up some notes, but I don't have this all scripted out in front of me. So, as we speak, I'm still playing. I'm playing Hard Classic. I'm currently in Chapter 3. I did Alm's routes, the part of it, and I'm still doing Celica's part. So I've done Part 1 with Alm and Part 2 with Celica, and now I'm in Part 3. I'm over halfway through with it. I think in the Celica's part, I'm at the part where you have to choose between whether you fight Sonia or Dean. I did play the original Gaiden, and actually, strangely enough, I actually enjoyed the original Gaiden for the most part, so I was pretty positive looking into it, thinking, yeah, I would probably enjoy this, since, you know, it's basically Gaiden presented well. And I did enjoy myself a lot in chapters 1 and 2. Those were really fun. I don't know why chapters 1 and 2 appeal to me so much, even though they're so simple, but I definitely dislike them. But chapter 3 right now, I'm definitely thinking that this is when the game gets quite a bit worse, and I remember that in the original Gaiden as well. Chapter 3 is just really bad gameplay-wise, but I do remember enjoying the last stretch of the game, the final part of Gaiden, so I know I will come out of this game feeling positive. This game definitely has its ups and downs though. Like, there is some things I really like about it, and there's a lot of things that I don't like about it. Overall, my feeling about it is positive, don't get me wrong, but I think this game could be criticized a little bit more by the community. I think it's getting a little bit too much praise for what it really is. Don't get me wrong, I still like it, but there are some aspects of it besides the obvious, well, it's Gaiden, and Gaiden was bad, that I think deserve some attention. So I'll start by talking about like the story and the characters. Obviously this is all very well presented, but it has a lot of fluff added to it. So for someone who has played the original Gaiden, there isn't a whole lot of surprises in it for me, obviously. So it feels like a retelling of original Gaiden with a lot of necessary things added. Now, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit more detail on how things are, but the amount of detail in this one I think wasn't really needed. Like, sometimes I just feel like it's just added to have more content rather than something that's actually interesting. Don't get me wrong, it was serviceable. And the same goes for like the story as a whole of Gaiden. You can argue back and forth about whether it was a well-written plot or not. I mean, I thought it was serviceable. It didn't blow me away, but it was alright. It was nice. Again, I'm not gonna get into the gritty details of it, cause spoilers. But if you can think of things that in Echoes that people criticize at the plot, you probably know what I'm getting at. But I think the most important part is that Echoes, from what I've seen in my own playing of it, and like in Let's Plays online and like people talking about it, the holes that the original Gaiden had, Echoes didn't really fix them, and it also arguably increased them. But again, I don't really want to get into that debate because I haven't finished Echoes yet, and honestly it doesn't really matter all that much to me. I will say that the new characters I've seen so far that they added, I'm really not a big fan. Like, I'm not even talking about like DLC. I'm talking, for example, like the Knight dude that saves Celica like a couple of times. I won't spoil anything about it. I haven't been at this big reveal yet, but I know what it is. But it feels like such an unnecessary addition to me that I really think shouldn't have been in the game at all. It doesn't ruin anything per se. It's not like it just instantly destroys Celica's whole character for him to be there, at least so far. But I'm just not a fan. Like, as someone who knows the original story, it worked perfectly well without him, and in those cases, I just don't see the point. Now, the presentation, like I said, this is definitely Echoes' high point. Everything looks gorgeous, from towns to dungeons to battlefields to portraits. it's lovely. It's all really well done. There's a lot of heart and effort gone into that, and I appreciate that so much. The game looks good, and people wanted to make it look good. They wanted to make a good looking game. They didn't just say, let's appeal to the lowest common denominator or whatever. They just said, we want this game to be super pretty, and I appreciate that kind of genuine effort. Now about the voice acting, because this is also something that a lot of people really, really like. Almost everyone I talk to says this is one of Echoes' core appeal. And again, I really love the heart that has been put into it. The full voice acting is such a huge improvement over just the random phrases and grunts from like A Wake of Fates. And the voice work is done well by directors and actors alike. It's very well done. If they were gonna do full voice acting, they did a superb job with full voice acting. So they really committed to this. And again, you can tell that there's heart and soul into it. But that said, and this is just my personal experience, I find myself wanting to turn it off sometimes. I actually did turn it off for a little bit, but then I missed the voices during some other parts of the game. So I was kind of going like back and forth on it. I'm keeping it on now, but the reason I personally don't like full voice acting as much as I thought I would, or as other people would, I think, is because I'm so used to reading Fire Emblem plots, and I read much faster than I can listen, which I think is true for most people. So if I'm both reading and listening, but they're not at the same tempo, that's kind of annoying to me. So what I could do is like look away from my screen and just listen to the plot unfold, but then it's kind of hard to keep my attention on the game to begin with. And like if the game makes me want to look away to just listen to it, that I don't think that's a very good thing. That doesn't that doesn't tell me that the game is good or anything. Like Echoes is a very pretty game. I want to look at the game, but if I get bored looking at the game because of the voice acting, that's not great. And I think part of this is because I have already seen the story, so I know where every scene is going. I know what the point of every scene is, how to take us from A to B. And I know that pretty much everything else is just banter. And the banter is good, the banter is fun, like something like a conversation between the villagers, like Gray and Tobin, that kind of stuff. That's all fine, but a lot of it is like filler that I don't really find the point of. So a lot of the time the voice acting doesn't really add a whole lot to me. Again, it's done well, but I don't know, it doesn't really work for me. I don't like it as much as I thought I would. And I do want to emphasize that I don't feel this way all the time about the voice acting. Sometimes I'm pretty happy to have it around and it adds nicely to the scene, but sometimes I just feel like I want to go faster. Sometimes I actually cut them off, press the A button, and move along to the next line. It really, like, you can't really make it any better than this. Like, you can't fix this in some easy way where you get the full voice acting experience, but you can still go as fast as possible. That doesn't really work well. Voice acting, you can't speed it up or anything. That would make it messy. So yeah. While we're talking about voices, I want to talk about crit quotes, because I've never made a video on this, but I think I've made it fairly clear at some points that I have been pretty firmly against crit quotes in Fire Emblem ever since they started in Awakening, because they clash with the serious tones of the battles in Fire Emblem. I believe in games besides Fire Emblem, they're a lot more commonplace. I can't really think of a good example, because I don't really play other games besides Fire Emblem, of course. But I know they're more common than this, and Fire Emblem only started doing them relatively lately, or relatively late. But my problem with voice acting, or my problem with crit quotes specifically, is Fire Emblem characters often feel more like remorseful and serious about war. So while they work for a bloodthirsty maniac like Perry, or maybe a less serious game like Awakening in general, and it might sort of work for some people in Echoes, like Python, who doesn't seem to take anything seriously, but they don't really work for a character like Celica. It kind of depends on the quotes. The ones that are just them going like, yeah, as they're about to crit, that's fine. That's just them putting an effort in, like you're just grunting, that's fine. And sometimes they're actually kind of in character, and those are fine too. Like if Celica says, my apologies, because she's generally feeling sorry about having to inflict pain on people or death or whatever. But a lot of the time the crit quotes are just straight up trash talking the enemy as they're delivering a critical hit, and I feel like Fire Emblem characters that have the time for that sort of thing, that doesn't really seem like it just feels too silly for me for Fire Emblem. It clashes with the more serious part of the battle. It works better in some game like Awakening or even Warriors, because those games take themselves much less seriously. So, and then there's goofballs like a Wayne that are perfectly capable of screwing things up because he's being too fancy about naming his moves or whatever. But for Echoes, it's a lot weird. And I'm not saying that Echoes is a completely serious game, mind you. Like, I know Echoes goofs around quite a bit. Again, the banter between Gray and Tobin is funny, and it would fit with that. But it only goofs around really when they're taking time off, when they're out of battle, or like when Celica or Alm are examining the scene and you're picking items up and you're checking items out and they give like some funny, goofy quote. But in battle, generally, it's serious business time, and the crit quotes seem kind of weird. Now that said, I am a little less firm on them now because I do see the charm. I did play Awakening and a little bit of Fates, and I've gotten a little bit more used to them. I actually like the quotes more that the characters say when you're about to select them, when you're about to move, like Jenny's ready to roll and everything, and all those kind of meme lines. Those are pretty funny. I like those, so I'm more mild towards those silliness quotes. But I remember there was a while ago, there was like videos of like FE7 and maybe even FE8 characters having crit quotes, and that just doesn't work for me. Like someone like Eliwood saying a weird trash talking line before he crits an enemy, that's just weird, man. That doesn't fit him at all. But I know I'm in the minority on this opinion, but that doesn't mean I don't have that opinion. That's just what I think. Okay, so let's talk gameplay and map design, because, oh boy. I actually beat the original Gaiden 3 times, and I knew that this wasn't going to be a deal breaker for me. Like, I'm finishing this game no matter what, but god, some of these maps are so outdated and so bad. Actually, like I said, I actually really enjoyed pretty much all of chapters 1 and 2. The maps there are simple, but still relatively engaging for the most part. Like, some of my favorite Fire Emblem maps are actually the simple, easy tutorial ones, because they fulfill their purpose quite well. Like chapter 11 of Eliwood's normal mode, or even hard mode. It has like a special place in my heart. Might just be nostalgia, but still, it's just really nice. And similarly, I really like the early Elms routes, leveling up Silk and the villagers, promoting them, that kind of stuff. That's fun. If you're curious, by the way, I went with Mercenary Grey, Mage Tobin, Cleric Faye, and then I also promoted Cliff Cavalier, and then never really fielded him again because he was getting so underleveled and underpowered and weak. Probably should have gone with Archer, but oh well. But I also like the boat maps of Celica, because, you know, everyone loves the boat maps. But even though boat maps are generally just put a guy on a choke point and kill everything slowly, I don't know, I still find that fun. Sometimes a simple map in Fire Emblem is still fun, especially when you play Fire Emblem to Unwind after a long day of working. So I definitely don't have a problem with that per se. But oh my god, after chapter 2 is over, the map quality just takes a nosedive. There's way too many open fields where every enemy just rushes you. Floor tiles that give 20% of voids to make hit rates even worse than what they were. My least favorite so far, but I know there's like worse, but the desert fort, where you pretty much cannot progress into the fort because every enemy attacks from huge range, the boss attacks from 5 range, the enemy has a choke point to work with, as well as healing tiles to run back to, and even getting to the fort is a pain because the rest of the map is a freaking desert. Like, that map is so tedious and slow. It's just not engaging at all. Now, I know this isn't exactly a hot take, okay? I know that this is a complaint that has been made about Echoes plenty of times before, so I don't really need to spend any more time complaining about it. It's pretty easy to say that even though Gaiden, it's Gaiden, it's remade, it's presented well, but it's still Gaiden. Yeah, fair. But the point that I want to drive home here is the low map quality is an example of a thing that they should have updated, but they didn't. I feel like they made a lot of changes to things they shouldn't have, and they failed to make changes where they should have. So the old maps were big, empty, and sometimes repeated because of the limitations of the NES and perhaps just the time back then. Like, I don't know, they just didn't know any better back then. But back when Gaiden came out, it was like a revolutionary game. There was very few like this. In fact, I'm willing to say there was almost nothing. I mean, I didn't play games back then, so maybe there was, but pretty sure this was a pretty revolutionary game. So to remake the game, but keep the map design intact of all things is just so weird. Especially when they were willing to revamp a lot of mechanics that have a huge impact on how maps are played. So they weren't really wanting to make the most loyal remake, the most, faithful remake ever. they were willing to revamp things, but they chose to keep this the same, and I think that's the core of the issue with Gaiden, or rather with Echoes. I feel like the most fun things about Gaiden were the really broken things. Case in point, infinite range warp. That shit was super fun. It doesn't even let you trivialize the game instantly, like in Shadow Dragon, which is instantly another game that's been accused of being too faithful of a remake. But unlike in Shadow Dragon, infinite range warp doesn't instantly trivialize a map because it's routes, and you can't just warp in the middle of a group of enemies and expect to just counter or even survive, because enemies have all kinds of long ranges. They're pretty powerful sometimes. You got like witches to take care of, 5-range bow enemies, all that stuff. So just warp alone isn't enough to beat a Gaiden map, especially not the late game ones. But what an infinite range warp does is make it a lot less tedious. Silk can now only warp like a couple of squares, which sometimes it feels like it might as well not exist. I feel kind of cheated for having to level up Silk all the way, and then she's like, bleh. Not that good. On the other hand, though, it is easier to raise Silk now because healing gives EXP, but whatever. While I'm talking about Silk, the fact that you have access to a second healer now through Faye, that negates a lot of gameplay death that Gaiden had before. Before, if you wanted Psyche to keep healing or using a warp after a while, you had to heal her, because every heal or warp that she does drains her HP, and warp drains it by quite a bit. So if you wanted her HP back, you'd have to use Nosferatu. And Nosferatu, you know, it's inaccurate, and if she misses, she could be in danger, she could die. So it's pretty tricky to set up safely. So, but if you did manage to do it, you could warp or heal more often. So, you know, pretty fair balance, basically. Now it's just like, okay, I just used warp, lost 7 HP, but it doesn't matter, because I can just heal it back up with Faye, and that's super broken. I still promoted Faye to Cleric, because, you know, I like broken stuff. I wanted some broken stuff back, but, you know. Another example of something that was super broken that they fixed it, even though they didn't have to, was, for example, the Angel Ring. It gives you double level ups in the original Gaiden. It doesn't even matter all that much. It's super fun. It's super powerful when it works, but you don't have to min-max to win Gaiden. It's just a fun option that looks broken, but since you promote to class basis anyway, you don't really keep any gains you get before your final promotion, so it's only great for like the last tier, and even then, like, you don't need super good stats to beat Gaiden. By the way, did you guys know Angel Ring doesn't double growth? Did you know that? Okay, so then there's a couple things that they did do a complete rehaul of, and some of those things I actually like. Some of them I actually like. I'm pretty positive on the new forging system. I haven't really explored it a whole lot, so I can't really say it. Like, I know that Killer Bow is super good, for example. I know there's like a couple of other really good options, but I don't really know enough about the new forging system to really rate it. But, you know, it's something new, and I gotta give him props just for trying something new. This whole game is them trying something new. I can appreciate that. But, I don't know, I can't really talk about forging too much, but I like that they did something different than they had in the previous games. So that's fine. But to use forging, you kind of have to do the dungeon raids, and we should talk about those. So when I first saw the dungeons, and I think my first impression matches other people's, it just took my breath away. It's gorgeous. You can run around, you can smash crates, you can sneak up on enemies, get some EXP. That was fun for the first couple times, but as you progress through the game, you have to do a lot, and it gets old pretty fast. I will say, I got into, I don't know if it's called Fear Shrine. No, it's a different one, but it has gargoyles, and the screech like freaking scared the hell out of me. That was really fucking scary. So that was pretty good. Definitely a nice change of pace from regular Fire Emblem gameplay. I'm not really sure if it fits Fire Emblem nowadays. It's almost out of character for Fire Emblem. So it feels out of place, but at the same time, it's new. So again, props for trying something new. That is actually a really big revamp that they did with it. The original Gaiden, it was just the overworld, you walk around, so it's hard to compare. But I will say about dungeons, one thing that irritates me is you want to smash like every crate that you see and pick up every coin, and that doesn't really feel like playing a game anymore. It's more like a chore that you want to do just so you can, you know, forge more powerful weapons or use your coins for other stuff if there's anything else you can do with them. So I don't know. It's kind of a chore, and I don't like that very much. Finding treasure is fun though. Hunting treasure in dungeons is definitely fun. Also, something else they did that I can't really say a whole lot about is combat arts. They're like magic spells for physical units that they learn by using certain items a lot. I kind of incidentally pick them up. Like if someone fights a bunch with a leather shield, like if it's like 5 or 10 battles, I don't know, they suddenly learn the skill swap. And like I haven't really found them very useful. One that I kind of like that's pretty funny is the one that you get, I think, when you use the gold dagger, where you can kill an enemy with the skill and you get some food. That's pretty cute. I do like the food addition to Gaiden, actually. That's pretty good. So there's some like good skills out there that you unlock later on. I know Alm gets a really good skill later on, but I can't really say a whole lot about him because I honestly don't really find them very impactful right now, but I might like them later. Some other random things I noticed. The battle forecast is really unintuitive if you're used to other Fire Emblem games. Like normally, in a, like FE7 or something, you see the battle forecast and you're like, okay, I do 7 damage times 2 and the other guy does 11 to me. And you compare it to your HP and you know you're fine. And then Gaiden does, or Echoes does something really different. It's like you have this much HP and if you fight you lose this much HP. And then the values listed in the forecast are like their attack and defense numbers, which I could get used to if it was like FE4 or FE5, because I know I have to just subtract defense from attack in those games. But in this game, it's such a weird mix-up, and I find it very hard to get used to. And it also shows you what HP both combatants end up at after the battle, but it takes into account like loss of HP through tome use, and it also doesn't really always tell the truth. Like if you're about to kill a guy, it still shows you the counter damage you would take. So it doesn't really tell you what's most likely to happen, and that can kind of screw things up. So even though the function of that is like that you can see at a glance what's going to happen if I fight this battle, but if you can't rely on it showing what's going to happen if you fight this battle, then you have to look into it in more detail anyway, which just makes it more confusing. You have to do more math, and there's nothing wrong with having to do math, don't get me wrong, that's actually a good thing of Fire Emblem, but a battle forecast should be very quick and intuitive, and this one isn't to me. Also something else while we're talking about like intuitiveness and menuness, I keep accidentally exiting in preps when I'm like meaning to fight the squad. I don't know what it is, I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason, like after I've done my preps for like a random battle, I save and like, okay, I'm ready to go. And for some reason, whatever I do, I keep accidentally exiting. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe it's me pressing the B button that lets you exit, and whereas it usually would take you to the battle, I only have this like memorized through muscle memory, so I have no idea, but that keeps happening. Something else that keeps happening to me is whenever a guy asks me if I want to recruit him, it kind of catches me off guard, and the default cursor option is on no, so I keep telling them no, I don't want to recruit you. Now thankfully, so far no one has actually left my army and like permanently hasn't let me recruit them. You can always just talk to them again and get them. But I keep pressing no and it's super annoying. I just want yes to be the default option. It's just a slight annoyance, but I just don't know why they did it that way. Okay, so after I recorded this, I realized I didn't talk about Mila's turn wheel, and I probably should because it's an important aspect of the game. So I'm inserting this somewhere awkwardly, and you can probably tell, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I would not be okay with Mila's turn wheel in a lot of other games. Fire Emblem really doesn't need save states. FE10 normal mode has them, hard mode takes them out. FE4 has them at the start of your turn, which I'm okay with. But I feel like in Shadows of Valentia, in Echoes, it actually works, because the maps are pretty tedious already, and playing them all over again as a punishment for carelessness, it's kind of annoying, and it doesn't really teach you all that much. I feel like the most of the times where I want to use this Mila's turn wheel, I feel like it was avoidable. I just got so bored paying close attention. It's like, think of like Path of Radiance, Maniac Mode, Clash, like Mangs' playthrough. That map would not be any more interesting if he had to reset every time someone died. It would be much more fun to play, and by more fun I mean less deadly, if you could just revert a bad move somewhere, because holy god, it's already pretty punishing to play these turns over and over. So for Echoes, I think it works. I'm not sure if I would want to see it again in future Fire Emblem games. I would rather they design the games in a way that you don't really need Mila's turn wheel. It's not a well, it's a wheel. But I feel like overall it works pretty well with the game. I don't want it to become like a staple feature, but I'm definitely happy that it's there. I'm glad to have it in a game, and I'm glad to see some more innovation out of the devs. It's very different from getting to save whenever, or having no saves whatsoever. I still think that's the best system, the best save scum system that there is, if you want to call it that, is like the save points in FE11 and 12. Those were definitely the cleanest solution to everything, save-wise, I think. But this is a nice new experiment that I like. So overall, I actually really like Echoes. I'm really glad to have sent this. I just think it could have been so much more. I feel like they revamped the wrong things, but it is still a beautiful, beautiful game. I would actually recommend Echoes more to people that haven't played Gaiden, which seems weird because, you know, the most well-known YouTuber that likes Gaiden, Gas Station, loved Echoes so much, and he's like the biggest fan of Gaiden ever. But I think people who played Gaiden, I mean, if they're anything like me, they will probably enjoy it more if they, you know, if they hadn't played Gaiden. That's my gut feeling anyway. I think I would have enjoyed this game more if I hadn't played Gaiden in hindsight, but then again, I haven't finished it. And again, most people haven't played Gaiden anyway, so I would still generally recommend people to play Echoes. This game is the most gorgeous of any game in the series, easily. Also, some of the best music, by the way. I didn't talk about that, but some of the tracks are really damn good. I would use them for this video just as background, but I think I've gotten copyright struck for them before. I definitely did when I used them as background for something else, so unfortunately gonna have to use some other music. But yeah, this game, it is awesome. It could have been more, but at the same time, I'm glad they made it, and I'm glad to have played it so far, and definitely gonna finish it. But this is what I've done so far, and hopefully now when people ask it, I can just link in this video. And you know, if you like Echoes, let me know in the comments. If you have different opinions than mine, definitely let me know. I love different opinions. I'll debate you to hell and back. Nah, just kidding. To each their own. I like Echoes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.